Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Hey guys, I'm standing in my garden today to celebrate the fact that exactly a year ago we managed to turn this sad, forgotten plot that was slowly becoming a construction site into a beautiful, bountiful garden. And it all started in January 2020 with a lot of careful planning. As a beginner, I quickly realized that there were a lot of things to consider before starting a new raised bed garden. So if you're curious at all how we got our tiny garden from looking like this to looking like this, then keep watching. But as beautiful as the snow is right now, and my dog, I'm gonna take you inside because it's freezing out here. Let's go. Welcome to Tiny Garden Habit. My name is Adriana and I garden in beautiful Transylvania, Romania, zone 6B. And today I want to talk to you about the 7 things I think you should know before starting your first raised bed garden. Now, had we known that starting a garden was going to be so labor intensive and expensive, I don't know if we would have actually done it last year, but we did, and we learned a lot in the process. And I know how difficult it is to be a beginner, and we often forget that we were once beginners. So this video is addressed towards beginners, and I hope you benefit from these 7 things that I'm about to share with you. Now, first of all, I really recommend that you choose the sunniest spot on your property, and that means getting to know your property, spending some time in there, preferably in the summer as well as the autumn and the winter, because the sun hits very differently every single season. For example, our garden only gets a little bit of sun in the corner right there. I'm going to show you in the winter time, whereas in the summertime it's completely sunny all the way to the neighbor's walls. Now, when choosing the sunniest spot, you have to keep the surrounding structures in mind. For example, we have our own building, the neighbor's building, and the west fence that is shading our garden as the sun sets. So we took all that into consideration, but even if you can't really do that, if you have certain things that cast some shade, as long as your plants are getting 6 hours of sunlight per day, you should be okay. Tip number 2 is choosing the perfect orientation for your raised beds. Now, what does that mean? Let's pretend that this is a raised bed. So the long side of your raised bed should face the south. So it should be north-south like this, and east-west like this. And as the sun rises and passes on top of your raised beds, all the vegetables will get enough sun and they won't shade each other. But even if you can't really do that in your garden, maybe it's too small, maybe it's narrow, and if you reverse the raised beds, it's not going to be an issue, and with experience, you're going to figure out how to put the tallest plants in the back so that they don't shade the shorter plants. Tip number 3 is deciding on the right size of your raised beds. When we, I keep looking outside because that's where my garden is. When we decided on the raised beds, I marked them with stakes in the ground before building them and decided on a length of 13 feet, and that's 4 meters. The length doesn't really matter. You can choose them to be however long you like, but consider if you make them really long that you're going to walk all the way around them to get to the other side. so don't make them too long. And the width of my beds is 1.3 meters, and that's 4 feet wide. And that's pretty much standard, because you have to be able to reach out all the way to at least to the middle of the bed. Because if you make them too wide, then you'll have to step on your beds, and we don't really want to do that, especially in no dig. But you can do that. The beds will be fine. Tip number 4 is creating pathways that are wide enough. So especially if you have a small garden, I could understand why you would feel tempted to just cram everything in and not leave enough room for pathways. But you're going to need at least one main pathway that is at least 2.5 feet wide, so at least 1 meter wide, so that you can pass your wheelbarrow through there, because you're going to carry a lot of things. Now let me tell you, you're going to carry compost, you're going to carry tools, you're going to harvest your vegetables, you're going to do some weeding. So there are plenty of things that you need to use a wheelbarrow for. And if you don't have room to move around, then it's going to get pretty uncomfortable. Now, there are some secondary paths in between the beds, and they don't need to be as wide, but I chose them to be at least 2 feet just for my own comfort, so I can sit in between them and kneel and do some weeding and planting and all that. Tip number 5 is building a cold frame. And building a cold frame in the sunniest spot of the garden, which I just showed you, and it becomes very obvious in winter months. Now, why would you need a cold frame? It's a great way to extend your season. For example, in the beginning of March, when you may have snow on the ground, on the other beds, the soil underneath the cold frame is warmed up and ready to go. And you can start your seedlings in there. You can harden off the seedlings that you've started indoors in there. And you can also use it to start a winter garden. So you sow winter vegetables in late summer or in autumn, and all winter long you get to pick them. Let me get some water because my throat is getting kind of scratchy. Tip number 6 is creating your ideal seed starting setup. Now, you need to do your own research on this one, because there are a lot of options to start your seeds. You can sow them directly in the ground, although I don't really recommend it. I'm going to explain why in another video. You can start your seeds inside a cold frame like we did last year. You can start your seeds in a greenhouse or on top of a hotbed inside a greenhouse, or you can start your seeds indoors underneath growing lights, and this is the option that I chose for this year because I want to have ultimate control to what happens to my seedlings, because I haven't had the success that I wanted for them last year. Creating a seed setup means investing a lot of money at times. So it's something that you need to carefully consider, and maybe not do this in the first year of gardening. Tip number 7 is making a list of all the supplies you need and having a budget for them. Now, I cannot stress this enough, because when we first started, we had no idea that all this would be so expensive. When you first start your raised beds, you need to order timber, you need to fill those beds with soil and compost on top. The pathways need to be mulched with either wood chips. We use sawdust in this case. You need to buy all the tools you need. You need to buy the starting module trays for your seeds. And optionally, you can buy, like I said, grow lights and shelves. So there's a lot of money to invest, and it's okay if you do it one step at a time. You don't really have to have it all figured out at once. Like, for example, when filling the raised beds, we used our own soil because it was obviously rich, and it was rested for many decades. Nobody lived there, so it was a really nice soil. But we used compost on top, and we bought that. It was pretty expensive. It was well rotted cow manure. As for seeds, we bought organic seeds, and those were pretty expensive as well. So I don't want you to get in over your head and just come to the conclusion that it was all too expensive and it was not worth it. Because in the end, gardening should be fun and it shouldn't be a burden. And you should know all the information up front. So in order to know all the information up front, I am going to invite you to check out my website. It's called tinygardenhabit.com, and it has all the articles on the beginner information that you need. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you next time with videos of the evolution of the tiny garden. Till next time, bye.